I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is Dwain Farley. Dwain is a Vistage chair who hails from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Dwain has two CE groups and a key executive group. Welcome, Dwain. Thank you for being my guest today.
Well, thank you, Eric. I appreciate the invite and enjoy being with you and your audience for the day, or for a little while.
Well, that sounds just wonderful. So thank you. So just to get started, tell me about. I know that you've got a long history as a CEO, as an executive, before you came to Vistage. I'd love to hear about your background, and I'd love to hear about why become a peer group chair at the end of that journey. What was calling you to Vistage?
Well, I appreciate the question. So yeah, you're right. I spent 23 years in the CEO seat, four different companies. Um, Started my first company right out of college. Went to a small technical college up in Northwest Arkansas, of all places. And so as I started my first company, I was very fortunate, very blessed that I had a unique skill set at that time. The IBM PC had just come out. And so I had a lot of local businesses there in Northwest Arkansas who wanted to take and put PCs in their businesses and start doing, electronic accounting.
And
And
these were
so,
the days before the IT guy was like ubiquitous.
absolutely. In fact, there were no. I was one of the few IT guys around who worked on PCs because, frankly, PCs weren't. There weren't a whole lot of them out. Started out on the Apple IIe. Some of your audience will remember those.
I remember my first computer was actually an Apple II Plus.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. And so, what's interesting is that there's a kind of there in Northwest Arkansas. There's kind of a cluster of large companies. There's Walmart, J.B.
Yep.
Hunt, and Tyson, all within about 10 minutes of each other. And so, lots of small businesses there supporting those, and I was able to kind of get a foothold in. Started my first company, just providing general IT services. PCs, networking, installing software, supporting those. Kind of grew those businesses over a period of time. Um, Doing a lot of programming, ultimately software systems design. Anyway, just continued to grow and ultimately sold that business, started another, sold that business, started another. So over 35 years, have had my share of starting businesses and exiting. So really enjoyed that process. Ended up selling two of my companies to other public companies, and then my last exit was to private equity, which was an interesting process in and of itself.
I,
But
I think we'll have to come back to that before we
absolutely,
close out. So you went from being the first IT guy in all of Arkansas to to selling your business to private equity way down the line. What then brought you to Vistage?
so I exited that company in 2017. Actually, what I was actually looking for as I transitioned out of that company was my next equity investment. I was looking for another company to invest in. And a recruiter for Vistage reached out to me one day, and very nice lady. I think she's still with Vistage, and asked me if I'd be willing to take a call and talk about being Vistage uh, a Vistage CEO peer group chair. I said, well, this is by email. I said, well, actually, I don't know what a Vistage peer group chair is. I don't know why I want to be one. but it's fine. I'm
I
more than happy to take and have a
sure.
conversation with you. And so did indeed have a call, and as she was describing what this process was and the interactions I would be having with other local CEOs, it just sounded interesting. I wasn't sold on it, but it
Right.
sounded interesting. And so I said, look, it does sound interesting. What do you how do we what is the next step here? He said, well, let me give you a couple of names of chairs in DFW to talk to and some members to talk to, and then I'll call you back in about 6 weeks. I said, okay, that sounds like a reasonable deal. And so I started making some phone calls, having some conversations, and about 3 weeks into that process, I actually called Vistage back, the same young lady, and said, we don't need to talk anymore, just sign me up.
What was what was your from sort of going from zero to sign me up uh on the Vistage front? I mean, what pushed you from I've never heard of this to sign me up?
It was very much about impact. Not as much, and I love what the chairs had to say and how they spent their days and the one-to-ones that we have with our CEOs and the kinds of conversations that are happening in the group meetings. And that was great. What what tipped the balance for me was the conversation with some of the members.
Gotcha.
And what they were saying is, look, had it not been for Vistage, had it not been for the chair I was working with and the other members of these groups, I know my business wouldn't be where it is today. And that was a reoccurring theme of these members. And I'm going, I wish. And actually, it came back around to kind of a fear of missing out
Right.
because I started wondering. I wonder what it would have looked like had I been able to be a part of one of these groups. And so it really felt like I missed out.
I can
Uh,
imagine. And
I had never heard of a CEO peer group, didn't know anything about it. And here are a group of CEOs and entrepreneurs and business owners telling me that this was a life changing experience for them and how it enhanced their journey. And I'm going, man, I wish I had that.
I had a similar experience recently because I was talking to somebody and and he had looked at my LinkedIn profile and right at the top of the LinkedIn profile it says that I'm a Vistage speaker. And he says, I looked at your LinkedIn and this it's weird because the first thing you mention is something that I've never ever heard of. What is Vistage? And
Yeah.
I said I explained the whole thing to him. And he says, "Wow, actually, that sounds really great." And it's wild, but still, people don't know that there are Vistage and other organizations out there that exist to put business owners together and CEOs together in a room and help them, sort out their difficulties.
Well, and coming back around to some of the conversations I had with those initial three chairs, and for the rest of my career, I'll always be very grateful to one of the chairs here in Dallas. His name is Greg Buston, and Greg's a great guy. He's actually the author of I don't know 3, 4, 5 books. Very accomplished author and been a chair for many many years. And I came back around. And I remember having that conversation with him, and I said, look, Greg, I've talked to several members, and they're all on the same theme about impact and how they've really grown their businesses with this, and they don't think they could have gotten here without their groups and without their chairs. And I said, look, level with me. Is this really
Right.
for real? Yeah, I mean, I've got my healthy CEO skepticism popping up here. Is this real? He goes, man, I don't know how to make this any clearer to you than what you're already seeing, but yeah, this is what impact looks like, and you have an opportunity to do that if you want to. It's like that, and that was kind of the okay. It's time to sign me up. I know what I can do for the next 10 to 15 years.
So
So
what was the process like and so was your first group a chief executive group?
yes, yeah.
What was the process of spinning that up like?
It's It's not for the faint of heart.
No.
As a CEO, you're used to having resources that you deploy. As a matter of fact, that's one of the chief. It's one of the things we do is resource deployment. I mean, we take the resources and we allocate them. Resource allocation, right? As a chair, other than Vistage, especially as a building chair, the resource is you.
Right.
Okay, so you've got
Your
to look to
time,
your
your energy,
network.
those are the resources.
That's right. Whatever resources you have are sitting within you. And so, you've got to go out and you've got to do your own prospecting and you've got to make those connections. You've got to go have conversations with other CEOs. You've got to help them see the vision of what and how this is going to work and how this is going to create value for them and their organization. And it takes a little while. I mean, you see it and you know it, but
Right.
it takes a little while for you to be able to take and create the language around it that you feel comfortable with. And so, it takes. I don't know. I think I built my first group in maybe 6 months from
That's
zero to actually launching.
that's
And
terrific.
so, yeah, and it was. You have plenty of doubts along the way. Can I do this? Should I do this? Am I smart enough to do this? Uh, but in the end, kind of once you get that ball rolling and you start having these conversations and you can see where the impact can be, that's kind of what drives you on to the finish line of actually launching a group.
You're not the first chair to tell me that the process of starting their first group definitely put them outside of the comfort zone that they were used to working in. What
Absolutely.
as you're going through this, and 6 months is pretty good. What are you telling yourself to keep yourself on that path of doing something that at this point doesn't feel natural, that is outside of your experience?
Yes. It comes back to one thing, and that's trust the process. You know, I tended to be kind of a results oriented, kind of looking at what is that I'm trying to get to, and I kept coming back around to those conversations that I had with members before I made the decision to actually join, this Vistage process, and what they were telling me about the impact Vistage had had. And if that's my goal of doing that for others, then I just have to trust this process that I'm going to get there. So every day, you kind of get up and go, yeah, this is kind of hard. It's a numbers game. You got to make as many, outreach and contacts and conversations. People will respond. And that was actually the big surprise to me is that there are chief executives in the world who are looking for this kind of interaction. Most of them just don't know it, and so
Well,
once you describe it to them, they actually respond. So you're not actually having to sell anything. It's just describe it, and they go, "Ah, I get that."
I mean, it's like seeing a color that you never knew existed. I,
Yes,
I
exactly.
I had been running my business for probably 13, 14 years before I'd ever heard of Vistage.
Yeah, yeah. And so coming back around, I felt like I had missed something. I wasn't going to miss this opportunity to do something very impactful for the rest of my career. And so it and it and it's been everything that I expected it would be, that I thought I had heard it was going to be. Okay.
So how did that, and you've been in it now for about 7 years?
I'm going into my sixth year.
Six years.
Yeah.
So 6 years. What is, how do you uh, account for the impact that you have made as a Vistage chair, and not just for your members, but with your members, because it's not just the chair, it's the interaction of the group that creates the impact. How how do you look back and feel like how you did? How do you grade yourself on impact over the last 6 years?
I'm pleased with where I am. The one lesson that I had to learn as a young chair, as a new chair, is to keep my mouth shut. Best and most effective thing I can do is just listen.
Absolutely.
It is
And
by
yeah,
right, and there's very little that I have to say that's probably worth listening to. And most of these guys, most of these chief executives, they know what to do. They know how to do it. There's some emotion. There's something wrapped around it. This kind of keeping them from it. Very often, just through them verbalizing it and us having a conversation, they can get past it. I mean, but you're right. But it all comes back to the group and all those interactions. My best meetings are where I say very little, and just all kinds of conversations going on to address a problem or issue or a challenge, and that's kind of the magic of it.
what was your and being a Vistage chair, as you've alluded to, is a lot different than being a CEO or owning a business. In the traditional sense, you are, essentially still running a practice. It's a
Yeah,
smaller practice. Um, what was the hardest part about transitioning um, from being a CEO to being a Vistage chair?
that's a great question. Um, Probably the hardest thing for me, and it's going to be that for just about any chair who's kind of come out of the corporate world, who's sit in the seat for a while, and that is you're not there to be a consultant or to be an analyst. Um, you're there to be a coach. You're not there to solve problems. You're there to ask really, really good and important and impactful questions. Because again, most of these people are really, really smart and they're very talented and very high performers. But just like anything, we get in our own way, and
Yep,
to help them get out of their own way, that's what I can do to be most impactful. And so it was to get out of the mode of, oh, I've seen that, I've done that, here's how to fix it.
absolutely.
So that's how I would answer that question.
What would you say the most special thing about your groups is? What's the thing that makes you excited about doing this every day?
I work with some really, really smart people. I mean, I can be sitting in our group meetings and I hear the interaction and the conversation going on. And I mean, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. Not only just being a chair, but just in the realm of small to medium sized businesses. And I'll hear terms, I'll hear concepts that I wasn't familiar with, even after all these years. Um, and that's interesting to me. There's a, because everybody who's sitting around that table is from a different industry. I come primarily out of the software development, systems integration world. Had a couple forays into other things, but when I hear how a lot of these CEOs are running their businesses in completely different industries than I had exposure to, it's just fun showing up. But the commonality is also interesting. It's people, it's revenue, and it's profits. And our challenge here is to get the right combination of the three as CEOs, and kind of watching everybody kind of figure out what that looks like.
Now you've done something that I imagine that several people in your groups have aspired to. You sold your last business, had an exit, and private equity happens to be one of the most common ways that happens nowadays.
Yeah.
What advice do you give folks who come to you and as members of your group and say, I think we're headed down this path? What stories do you tell them?
Well, First of all, private equity is a very different animal.
Yeah.
And so kind of the first conversation as a member approaches me and talks about, hey, I've been approached by private equity. The first thing we start thinking about or talking about is, are they really what the private equity company is looking for? So if you think about what private equity is about, they're going to come in, they're going to buy out the majority of the equity of the company. Their expectation is that this company is at a point where it can scale quickly. So the question is that true? Do you truly have the management team? Are you really in the marketplace? Do you really have the products? Do you really have the infrastructure? Do you have really all the things that private equity is truly looking for to be able to be successful? Because once they pull the trigger, once this deal is done, they're going to expect you to take and grow faster than you've ever grown before. They're going to be very intolerant of missteps.
How long did you stay with your company after the purchase?
Well, I stayed with so we were actually a roll up. Okay.
Okay.
So coming into the deal, I knew I would be exiting, and that was actually my preference. I told them I would stay for a year, and I did, actually a year and a month, to kind of help with some of the transition.
Baker's dozen.
I'm sorry.
Baker's dozen, 13 months.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit different from my perspective, because my expectation was I was going to be exiting and going to doing something new. The statistic that I tend to take and talk about with the members of my groups that are anticipating some kind of private equity purchase is, be aware. The average tenure for this situation for the CEO who's being bought is about 24 months.
It's a long time to be, it's sort of like you must sort of feel like, hey, this is my house, but it's not really my house.
Right. It is in fact no longer your house. Somebody has bought your house. You're just living in it.
I imagine it's a really challenging experience.
It is, and some CEOs, some owner founders, CEOs who've made that transition, some have had a hard time with it, because now, truly, all of the vast majority of decisions are very, very much financially based. It's about return on investment, and they've got to know what they're being. They just have to be very, very aware of what the expectation by the private equity company is, and sometimes there's a mismatch there. So as a chair and somebody who's kind of been through this process, I try to make sure that expectations on both sides are squarely aligned.
I bet it comes up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time. If folks want to get in touch with you, if they have questions about Vistage, about your groups in particular, or about the deal that they're about to sign with a PE firm, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I would suggest Dwain.Farley, DWAIN .Farley, FARLEY, at vistagechair.com.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.